Welcome, everybody. We are happy to have you to another edition of Community Capital Live. Um, we are just letting everybody into the room so that we can go ahead and get started and you guys can participate here. Thank you for joining Community Capital Live. I'm really grateful that I get to do this every couple of weeks with you all. This is, I think, a pretty special and unique thing that we get to do. One of the best kept secrets out there on the internet in the content world. And if you're watching this now or later, thank you for your time. I know you could spend it doing a whole bunch of other things, and we're glad that you care about using capital for better to better the world. I am excited for us to get to talk to a couple folks that we're going to really get to dig in on what they've been doing and the interesting things and how they've been developing over at in the, I want to make sure I say it right. Is it the Northwest Pennsylvania? Goodness, am I
Yeah, you're
lost the
right.
name.
Investment
Yeah.
cooperative. Yeah.
Yeah, the Northwest Pennsylvania Investment Cooperative. This is really continuing the series we've been doing where we've been talking to a lot of um, investment funds that are focusing on local investing, on impact investing. And over the last couple of months, we've really gotten to talk to a lot of co-ops in that process. And so we're really excited to get to dig in more in a little bit with them. First, here, I do want to make sure that we introduce our partners and our panel. And then we're going to dig in with both Renna and Vesta from the Northwest Pennsylvania Community Investment Co-op. So our partners, first I want to mention the Main Street Journal. I think that's how a lot of you on here have heard about us. Main Street Journal is the place to go for local investing, everything, news, updates, events. That's really kind of the hub if you're interested in investing locally, wherever you are. Um, I also want to make sure we highlight especially neighborhood economics. Also, if you are in if you have really any interest in developing communities, I think neighborhood economics is one of the first conferences you should be at. They just finished up the last one here in Asheville, just about a month or so ago. And Kevin, we have one coming up in Chicago. Is that the next one?
Yeah, that's right. The last day of September and the first day of October.
Yeah, excellent. So in the beautiful, beautiful time of year to be in Chicago, and a great, great thing to get to if you want to connect with other people in this world. You make some really long-lasting connections and meaningful connections there. Also want to shout out Impact Alpha, kind of the Wall Street Journal for impact investing all over the world. Make sure to check out the archive of these podcasts that are going to be going up there, as well as the Main Street Journal. And lastly is my show, the Mindful Marketplace show that was on Biz Radio US that talked about social entrepreneurship, local investing, and worker-owned cooperatives. Really excited to get in today with both Renna and Vesta from the Northwest Pennsylvania Investment Co-op. Could you tell us, Vesta, could you unmute first? I wanted to kind of understand, set the table for us a little bit about why there felt like there was a need to create this co-op and what really got things off the ground initially.
Yeah. Sorry about my little dog in the background. I told him he wouldn't bark and he's barking. I moved to Meadville in 2004 and like a lot of towns in the Rust Belt, it was struggling, right? It was a town that has a really rich history, which I didn't know as I had first moved here, but a lot of kind of things that had moved out, right? So the zipper was invented here and moved on, right? There was a huge corset factory here that had originally been here and moved on, and it was trying to find its way forward. And after I had been here several years and connected with a colleague, we actually had a speaker come in from Northeast. Near Minneapolis, and they had started a cooperative there to buy back commercial real estate and rehab it and lease to local entrepreneurs to really provide opportunities that especially out of town landlords wouldn't provide, right? They weren't as invested in the community. They weren't as invested in the local vibrancy of a downtown or a retail environment. And we were really inspired by what Northeast was doing and actually used them as a model to start our investment cooperative here with the goal, again, of purchasing commercial properties and then leasing at low or below market rates to local entrepreneurs who would bring something to the community. So our goal was the people of the town would own the real estate and then would patronize the business, and it would all be this sort of
Mm.
symbiotic relationship where everybody benefited.
How did you guys come to that, to the idea of the community-owned commercial real estate being the focus for y'all's development?
Yeah, it's a great question. And we can't take credit. Northeast had the first idea there. And what they were thinking there was, unlike housing cooperatives, which we also have here in Meadville and are doing great work, and we've partnered with one of them. But unlike housing cooperatives, when we are buying and leasing commercial real estate, we can have a really wide impact on the population of the community. And we can do it in ways that improve the vibrancy of the community for lots of people, right? So
Mm.
not just the local entrepreneurs, but all of the patrons of that business, and actually the whole kind of surrounding businesses as well, because the more vibrant your commercial areas in a town, the more all of the businesses benefit. And so we saw this as a way to have a wider impact. We also really were dedicated to the idea of becoming and staying a for-profit cooperative, which is unusual, I think, in many ways. But we knew that because the two largest employers in our town were the hospital and the college, both of which had nonprofit status, everything they owned was taken kind of out of the tax
Mm.
ecosystem of the
Mhm.
community, and we did not want our cooperative in that same position. We wanted to be paying taxes, contributing to the municipal services, being part of all of the redevelopment of our town.
Mm.
And so that was a really important piece of the model as well.
No, that's really fascinating. I hadn't thought about it from that angle. That's how would you say, if you were talking to someone that was, looking at different investment opportunities or ways that you could invest, is there anything you would say that would make your model different from a traditional real estate investment? Like, how do you guys make sure it aligns with your values of the solidarity economy, equity, inclusion, and democratic control?
Yeah, it's a great question. And Renna may want to weigh in on this one too. But at least initially, what I would say is, like most cooperatives, we have the one share, one vote model. And so, although we do have a board to handle kind of day-to-day interactions of the cooperative, all of the members contribute, both formally and informally, to the decisions of the cooperative. They give us feedback on what kinds of buildings or what kinds of businesses they would particularly like to see. We're not always able, obviously, to do everything everybody would want. We're a small group still, but they're also then really committed to thinking about what we want to do in the future. So actually, Ren, I'm sure we'll talk about this, but we just revised our bylaws and thought about expanding our mission a little bit, partly because of that partnership I was talking about with the local um, residential cooperative. And that's coming from our membership, right? And so that idea that the members themselves are directing the goals and efforts of the cooperative. We just completed a big strategic planning process, which included interviewing a lot of our members and finding out, what is it that you want? So we work really hard to stay committed to what the goals of our membership are.
Yeah, Rena, do you have anything to add there? I'd like to let you jump in now. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I think what's been so beautiful about what we've created at New Pick is just the opportunity for everyday people to get involved in their community and um, to be a part property owner. We're up to 77 members now, and so that's 77 folks in our area. Some of whom, may rent their own homes, but now they can, say that they have ownership in a downtown property, and just expanding that. We have a local developer of sorts in town who has a lot of his own private wealth that he's been able to invest in a lot of buildings downtown and in a new project. But we recognize that alone, none of us have that money and that capital to be able to do it ourselves on our own. But we recognize that together, we can pool our resources. Of course, money is the primary way that folks invest in our cooperative. But also even just time and energy. We have a lot of active members that have really stepped up that aren't even on our board, that put a lot of just their own time, sweat, energy into improving our building, our organization. And we something that the folks who have been part of this from the beginning say a lot, and that has become ingrained in my brain as well, is that no one's coming to save us. So it is really very much all about folks that are here addressing the problems that we see every day because we live here, and working to make our community a better place because we directly benefit from it.
That's that Appalachian spirit right there. I was just this morning talking to someone about that exact phrase, "No one's coming to save us," of what people had here after Helene, and just saying, "Hey, it's us. We got to band together and do this." So I imagine that attitude has played well for you guys to be able to build that collective there. I want to let Michael and Kevin jump in here. I forgot to earlier introduce our panel. Michael Schuman, editor-in-chief, CEO of the Main Street Journal, and also the author of several books on local investing, including Put Your Money Where Your Life Is. He's also coming out with a new article soon on investment models being done locally in the UK that you should be on the lookout for. So go check out Main Street Journal and Michael. And then also Kevin Jones, who's the co-founder of Neighborhood Economics, as well as SoCap and Impact Hub and a few other things as well. So I want to open it up to you guys to dig in on the details. I'm excited to learn about just kind of what you guys have been able to do as far as types of properties, how big the fund's getting, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, Michael, I'll throw it to you first to be able to kind of dig in on the details here and ask
Great.
anything.
Well, Renna, since you're unmuted, let me ask you this about your town. So what's the population of the town, and what are the other sort of nearby population centers? And are you thinking about things just in terms of your town, or are you thinking regionally?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So we are based in Meadville, Pennsylvania, which is in the northwest corner of the state. We're about 45 minutes south of Erie and an hour and a half north of Pittsburgh. And Meadville is at around roughly 13,000 people, give or take. We've been pretty stagnant for a while. We do have a private liberal arts college in our town. We're the county seat. We also have an independent hospital system in our town. So we have a lot of anchor institutions and being the county seat, a lot of social services are in our town. And so as Vesta had mentioned earlier about, us being committed to staying on the tax rolls and being a for-profit entity has to do with a lot of that, because our town is roughly 40% tax exempt because of all of these nonprofit entities and municipal entities that we have in our town. Our county is a rural county, so we are the urban center of our county, which I believe has a population around 80,000. So it's a smaller community. We our name is Northwest Pennsylvania Cooperative, so we I believe, and Vesta might be able to speak to this more, didn't want to be pigeonholed just in Meadville, but because that's where a lot of us are based and live, it just was a natural place to start. And we have recognized through like our new strategic planning process as well that we do really want to focus on the Meadville community for now in our downtown, because there's a lot of opportunity there. And, you know, we're still early into this and not quite ready to expand much larger beyond that.
So let me ask this follow-on question, which is co-ops are formed for many reasons, and one is because the market or the public authorities are not quite doing what you think needs to be done. So, I mean, if you had to outline like what's the direction that these other two entities were not quite achieving that you're hoping to achieve, what would that be?
So I think that was partly our initial thought when we started the cooperative and part of our initial pitch. Not so much that like the other anchor institutions, the hospital or the college, weren't necessarily doing what they were doing, but their goals were very different. But where we were really concerned, where a lot of the real estate in the town was concentrated in the hands of a few people or organizations who were not particularly interested in improving the properties or providing opportunities to local businesses. Properties would sit empty, often for years at a time, because the individuals who were in control of those properties just didn't have an incentive to price them at a level that would let startup businesses, especially because that's what we were initially thinking we would particularly help foster, gain access. And they certainly weren't interested in investing and doing improvements in the properties. And so we were starting to even see buildings kind of deteriorate locally after sitting empty. So one of the urgent elements that we really wanted to address was that idea, right? We're not out of town. We're not even a single entity, right? It's literally the community coming together to own and rehab properties because they are the places we shop and work and patronize.
So you said that you've just sort of finished doing a bit of a strategic plan with your 70 plus members. And so what did you learn from that? Where do they want to take the organization, say in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, and so this was an update to a prior strategic plan. And you know, in the previous one, there was a lot of focus on we had just acquired our first building. So the priority at that time was really focusing on improving that building. We spent a significant bit of money on like energy efficiency improvements, as well as like facade work to it. And we really just wanted to, you know, we had a goal of just, you know, becoming good landlords and really just getting kind of that, you know, things like policies and process down. And so now, when we returned to our plan and updated it, and in talking with folks, there's definitely a lot of energy around like, okay, what's next for us? Wanting to grow our membership. We like I mentioned earlier, we're at 77, have this goal of I would love to get to 100 members by the end of the year. We'll see. There could be some opportunity to capitalize on that with maybe a new project coming up, and that exactly wanting to increase our partnership and collaboration with our other organizations in our town. Since the investment co-op was started, we have a new nonprofit entity that is formed, the Meadville Community Revitalization Corporation, that you know has a lot of similar goals as far as just improving our downtown. But we, you know, want to make sure that we can advocate for local control and democratic control as much as possible. as that private nonprofit entity is working and looking at their projects. And yeah, and we also, we want to get to another project. We still just have the one property, and so we are actively looking at other properties at the moment, and thinking about what businesses can we partner with as tenants, and just how can we expand our own footprint.
So I have a ton of questions. Let me just ask one more and we'll pass it on to Kevin and come back if there's time later. But maybe just say a little bit more about what the entry fee is for members. And did you need to bring additional capital to the table to buy this one building? And what was the structure for getting that there? And I guess the last piece of this question is, has that first investment paid off? Has the property value escalated? And are you in better shape to buy the second building?
Those are great questions. So I'll start with the structure and then maybe Renna can talk about the current financial picture. One of the things we changed from our inspiration cooperative in Northeast was the cost of entry. As Renna mentioned, right, this is a socioeconomically under-resourced area. We're well below not just the national average, but even the average for Pennsylvania in terms of economic wealth shared amongst the community. And so our membership share and voting share in the cooperative is $500. And we created a unique structure that didn't exist at Northeast, actually at the request of our members and future members, that members can co-own a share. So we had always had a family share, right? So that like a partner, like partners could own a share together if they were in a family situation. But what we learned very quickly after that first year was there were lots of people who wanted to partner on a share because $500 was simply too high of a price, but they wanted to contribute as well. And so we designed a unique type of share that they could be co-owned. One of them has to be designated as the voting member to streamline the cooperative organization, but they can change that if they send us just in writing at any time, right? So, if Renna and I owned a share together and Renna was the voting member, but then her life got crazy and we were going to switch that to me, we could just notify the co-op and we would handle that switch so that it's still one share, one vote, but they can then decide who their voting member is. And for our first property, we absolutely had to rely on other sources of capital as well. And I'll let Renna talk a little bit more about this because she's kind of deeply involved. But we took out a loan with the Redevelopment Authority of Meadville, who was able to offer us really favorable terms on that interest rate. Do you remember it exactly? Was it 2.9? I think it was 2.9. It was 2 point something. I apologize if I have the point wrong. Because we knew we would need money for the renovation as well. We wanted to make the bathroom ADA compliant. We're still having some ADA issues because the building is not set up to have a ramp or an elevator. So we're working on that. But yeah, so we definitely needed a loan for that as well to cover that initial renovation. And it had been a law office. And so redesigning at our current tenant is makes mead and now also serves food, right? Mead is a sort of honey wine beverage. And so they needed a lot of changes to the building and we negotiated with them in terms of what changes that we would do and what changes that they would do. And they had never had a retail space before. So it was kind of the perfect first client for the cooperative because it was a small business completely locally owned that had been working for several years to get their product out in festivals and Saturday gatherings and those sorts of things, and they were ready to move to having a permanent footprint in the community.
Great. And the question about escalation of property, has the property gotten more valuable since you bought it, and are you inspired by that?
I'm sure it is a little bit more valuable, but property values in Meadville are not generally rising very quickly. So, and then COVID, of course, hit commercial properties particularly hard. So I don't know what the we don't have a current, Renna, we don't have a current.
Yeah, I don't think we've done any sort of reassessment of the property since the improvements, and as Vesta mentioned, we're we're not even quite finished with all of them, but we did put about $13,000 worth of energy efficiency improvements. We did get some of that money back through a grant with the electric company. But we've also added a mural to the side of the building that was done by a local artist in collaboration with the college that we received some money for. And one of our members, kind of beautified the front of the building and added like a little outdoor seating area. And so I think, that it, probably is definitely added some value to the building that wasn't there before. And we're not quite at the point where it is paid for itself, but we're we're getting there. We're doing all right financially. We Something that also came up in our strategic planning process was a conversation around dividends, because that is something we've actually not paid out yet. And so there's a real conversation around like what's our priority around getting dividends out versus wanting to just keep reinvesting in our property and in another project. And so that was something that came out, was that a lot of folks were more interested in just seeing that reinvestment rather than getting paid out themselves. And so I think that's been inspiring to see our membership really believe in what we're doing. And, we tell folks that are investing that like this is definitely a patient investment. And so, if you're looking for a quick or large return, this is not the model for that. And, I think across the board, our members have chosen to invest because they believe in what we do, not necessarily because they're looking for that financial gain. That's definitely something we are working toward and want to deliver on as as we've stated from the very beginning. But for right now, we're just focused on kind of growing that fund so we can, keep going.
Great,
Well, and I'll just
thank
add
you.
one thing there really quick, just as evidence to back up Renna's point about our members really being committed to this mission. Over the course of our existence from 2017 to now, we have had one single member divest from the co-op. That is it.
Hmm,
So
That is great news. Over to you, Kevin. But you are muted.
Sorry. Oh, so thank you. This has been really interesting. Vesta, your day job is at the intersection of health and communications. And what's the health story around Buy Back the Town? How will it make the community more healthy to have the ownership local and folks creating intergenerational wealth through the real estate and that kind of thing? What's the health angle here?
that's a great question, Kevin. I would say obviously, right, that the commercial center of the town is in many ways, if we're going to do a health metaphor, the heart that's sort of pumping all of the lifeblood through the town. And the more that local individuals are the people who are maintaining and strengthening that heart of the town, the more healthy it's able to be. Right. And so I don't talk a lot about health in terms of my work with the cooperative, but I actually really like that question in terms of thinking about it in that way. One of the things that we know, of course, is that economic inequality and economic deprivation actually have real world consequences for human health. Right. So at the college, I teach in our global health studies department as well as in communication. And what we see consistently over and over and over again, study after study after study, is that individuals are less healthy when they are battling economic inequality and are in under-resourced areas. Right. And so what the work that we're doing, if we can get it to a scale, I don't think we're there yet, but if we could get it to a scale where we really can be pumping that revitalizing blood into the community, actually everyone in the community will see some of that benefit. And of course, right, that idea that healthy communities mean that people are getting out. They're moving around more. They're walking around town just on a very simple, practical day-to-day level, right? If you're walking to Blissful Meads, which is the tenant in our current property, and then you walk over to the clothing store that's just a block or two away, or then to our local cards and board game store, right? Those kinds of things are just good for people to be out.
Right. And, as you look at that economic flow that is more local, that is, creating assets for the folks in town, I wonder, in some places they've actually measured the economic health that way. They've looked at, with our own, we have a fund somewhat similar to yours that we invest in sole proprietors who need growth capital, and we do philanthropic equity through a DAF platform, and invest up to 60 to 80,000, and to help them become job creators. But you do low level Kiva like loans, 6,000, 7,000 kind of thing. I love to see the money come out at really small levels. Why do you think a multitude of small deals is a really good thing?
So I'm not sure. So like we've actually only done one small loan. This was a partnership that I was talking about with Common Roots, which is a housing development cooperative. And that
I'll two Kiva things on your site, maybe.
we are a Kiva trustee. And so we do sponsor Kiva. That was actually one of our very first ways. One of the things, just to do a little more history, one of the things that I'm sure everybody in this call knows, but I was naive to when we first started, is how long it takes to get a project like this off the ground. And so we became a Kiva trustee early on so that we could be having real consequential impact long before we were able to purchase that first building. And because a local entrepreneur in our town had actually inspired a lot of people through starting a coffee shop with a Kiva campaign, and people were like, look, I want to participate in Kiva. And so the cooperative became a Kiva trustee.
Okay. Yeah. It builds on itself, the network.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's right. That's really interesting. Renna, you've looked at buy back the town now. If you could talk more about the urgency, like why should people pay attention to this now and put the money here in this cause to buy back the town? Why now?
Yeah, we are the kind of interesting turning point in Meadville right now. Our downtown had started to bloom a bit again a couple of years ago. We started a independent business alliance downtown, doing a lot of programming with events and then just encouraging folks to come downtown, shop downtown. So for a couple of years there, just a lot of energy, a lot of stuff going on, and there still is today, and in new ways, but this past year was a bit rough on quite a few of our local businesses, our downtown businesses, and we've had some closures. We've also had folks relocate and expand. But now we have quite a few empty storefronts again that have been sitting vacant, and be it for a variety of reasons, of the rent is too high, or there haven't been improvements to the property, and we've also really have seen kind of back to the point of social health and economic health in that intersection. We've seen a real influx of vape shops and like games of skill shops in our downtown, which for economic health, they are not a sign of a vital, robust, thriving downtown. And social health, those types of businesses do prey upon people's addictions, or just, individuals' own economic well-being. And so those are the kinds of businesses that we don't necessarily love to see in our downtown, but the property owners that are accepting them, you know, are they are concerned about rent, and they're concerned about making a profit, and so they're willing to just kind of accept whoever wants to move in. And we want to be in a position where you know, we can say, you know, no, we're going to hold out and wait for that entrepreneur, for that business that we know is going to add value and benefit to our community. And we are having relationships with businesses that, you know, are telling us they want to be tenants of ours, or you know, working with folks that want to start a business, or open up a physical location in our downtown, so that there's, you know, an actual community benefit with the businesses that we partner with. And so I think it's important right now to focus on this local control, and buying back our town, so that we can deter the kinds of businesses that we know are not healthy and productive for our community. And we also, with the revitalization corporation that I mentioned, that will be trying to attract more like private developers. You know, we want to make sure that we kind of have a stake in what's happening in our community before, you know, we want to be proactive, and be ahead of that, so that, you know, we also can maybe ward off any, you know, gentrification, or whatever the case may be.
Right. Do you know Lanier Richardson's work with Buy Back the Block?
I don't.
So,
I suggest you look it up. He's done things with Brookings, and he's got a manual for community commercial real estate ownership. He's pretty brilliant guy. I work with him, and I have to
Buy
say,
back the block, you said?
Buy Back the Block. It's
Okay.
a
Yeah.
manual that he published with Brookings, but he's got some funds that are doing that as well. Really interesting guy.
Thank you.
Take a look and I'll be glad to connect you.
Yeah, thank you very
absolutely.
much.
Yeah, Lanier's doing excellent work. Kevin connected us, and I got to interview him last year. Got to do kind of an overview of the projects he's doing there, and also with Rutgers. Yeah, excellent work there. Yeah,
I'm ready
Kevin
to
and
pass
Michael, I
it
know you
off.
guys, I know Michael said he had a whole bunch too, but I I also wanted to, we've got a couple coming from the audience as well, but Kevin and Michael, what else did you guys, what else are you guys still curious about?
Well, let me ask one more question, then get to audience questions. So I'm curious about the relationship to the city. So, and Renna,
Yeah, me too.
you're sitting inside City Hall, or whatever office is managing the city. And if I was the city, I would see it in my interest to get you to like 10,000 members, and as a major force for community economic development. And I would think about, all right, can I give tax breaks to people in the city if they join there, or if I can, you know, award people special commendations, or maybe the city can do a match of membership dollars that comes in as another investment. So how are you thinking about that, and how do we get the city more involved?
Good
Yeah.
question.
That is a wonderful question. And as it goes in a small town, a lot of us wear multiple hats, and are involved in, and it feels like everything. So yeah, so I'm the community development director for the city. That's my day job. And I see that we have on the call here our current board president, Autumn Vogel. She is waving, who responded great ideas to your question here. And she also happens to sit on city council, and she worked for our redevelopment authority years ago, I believe, at the time whenever the investment co-op was starting up. So there has been this you know, intersectional history between the organizations and entities. And as Vesta mentioned, the redevelopment authority of the city, that was it is the lender that we as New Pick went to for our first property, and are considering going to again for our second. Beyond that, at the moment, there has not been a lot more collaboration. The city is I think the picture has been getting brighter for a while. It's been pretty bleak as far as our budget and deficit talks, and
For the
our
city.
yes, for the city, yes, to be clear, not the investment co-op, but for the city. And the prior city manager used to say he was just steering a sinking ship, so trying to just plug holes. And so the thought of the city kind of matching member contributions or tax breaks or something seemed pretty far off. But our budget has been getting better each year. We have some new leadership that's been really exciting and forward thinking in the city. But also just spend a quick second to say that there just are some unfortunate politics in the city still, more just from like the image and perception of what the investment co-op is doing versus like what the city as a governmental entity should be doing. We live in a pretty conservative area, our county especially. So, there have been folks that think what we're doing is socialist, or, just nonsensical, that, that it won't work out, that, we're, doomed to fail or something. And folks that want to see the city just, focus on those basic services of public works and police and fire. But we've got a council and leadership that knows that it takes more than those basic services to have a healthy and vibrant community. And so, hopefully maybe there's some pathways forward. But yeah, there are locally still some things to overcome as far as what people think we're doing.
But you can't have the services without a tax base, and you're trying to expand the
Yeah,
tax base with private
absolutely.
development. So
Oh yeah.
I don't, yeah, you're up against a nonsensical argument. All right,
Yeah.
Joel, other questions?
Yeah, well, we had some good ones come in here from the audience and in the chat. I wanted to see if Jennifer, if you'd be able to unmute. I see you're starting your own investment co-op up in Montana and had a few questions.
Thanks, Joel. Yeah. In fact, I think the Montana Community Development Center that's been incubating us has also been in contact with you guys out in Pennsylvania, or you're maybe in a network group through the co-op, one of the national co-op groups, because I mentioned I was joining this webinar and they said, oh, we know those people too.
Nice.
So we're just getting started. We have our provisional incorporation through our Secretary of State here in Montana, and we've just reached 15 subscribers. And we've been working on this for just about a year, and we got our provisional in January. So it feels like, I mean, for my pace, I would love to go faster, but this is a statewide thing, and we're doing it very, volunteer style. So it's going to go at the pace it's going to go. But we're hoping to kick off formally in the next couple of days or couple of weeks here. 15 was our internal target to formally launch. But I'm just curious, at what number did you formally launch? And then how challenging has it been? I think, Vesta, it was you who mentioned you guys started in 2017. So you now have 8 years of experience. I'm just curious how the growth has flowed, and also just roughly how what your overall assets under management are, and how does that break down in terms of your common shares and your accelerator shares?
Yeah, these are great questions. And I want to say, first of all, congratulations on getting to your formal launch. That's a huge step. We were super naive. None of us had any experience starting anything like this when we started in 2017. So we started with 4 of us who were all teachers. And we thought, well, this is a model that makes so much sense. Everybody's going to see that this makes sense. And we brought aboard a local entrepreneur who had retired and was doing a lot of mentoring for small businesses in the area. And he sort of mentored us for a while and helped us put together a more comprehensive business plan and those sorts of elements. Actually, while we were seeking out incorporation, we did it kind of all at the same time. And then, as Renna was mentioning, our current board president was working at the Redevelopment Authority at the time and was also became one of our founding board members. And so together we all kind of just figured it out. I spent that whole summer in 2017 doing presentations to anybody who would listen, right? So we went to Rotary meetings and we went to Elks meetings and we went to community meetings and we held all kinds of little coffee hours and all kinds of things. And the thing that you've probably encountered, but perhaps surprised me a little bit, was how much people would say, that's a great idea. Come back to me when you have a business and a building. And I was like, okay, but we can't have either of those things until we have the capital, right? And so selling the concept actually it took us a while to get that messaging, I think, to where we want it to be. And you still sometimes get that. Renna has been doing a lot of our membership drive, and so she can kind of talk to some of the contemporary challenges once we had a bigger group and a building. But we had this sort of cart horse problem where people are like, I think that's a wonderful idea. Once you have a building, once you have a person, come back to me and I'll invest. And so telling the story in a way that helped them to see themselves as part of the process, which I worked a lot on, thinking about, right, you are the ones who let us get the entrepreneur and let us get the building, and we're not going to take this in a way that you need to be worried about. We actually were doing a lot of work across political lines in those early years. Our first business mentor, who I mentioned, was deeply networked and connected with a lot of the kind of bigger money, more conservative constituents of our community. And that was really, I think, helpful for people to see, like, oh, there's nothing scary about what you're doing. But as the city has done what I think of as incredibly positive changes, right? Making landlords more accountable for their properties, both residential and commercial and those sorts of things, the cooperative has increasingly been seen as aligned against those more older entities and people who would like to extract as opposed to invest. So those were tensions that we're encountering a little bit more, and Renna can probably talk to that now. But basically, that was what we did. We talked to everybody who would listen, and that got us our initial push. We hit, it was 2017, so I'm not going to tell you for sure. But we were in the upper 20s in members that first year, and then continued to add on. And then Renna has been responsible for a big push just in this last year or two to get us to that 77 that we're in now. There was progress over those years. I don't mean to suggest it was dead, but I just mean like we're in another big kind of recruiting moment like we were back then.
Kind of getting momentum and critical mass. Yeah.
Exactly.
And how about on the shares, in terms of, the voting versus accelerator shares? I love that you call them voting and not common shares, and that they're not preferred, they're accelerator. I'm taking notes to bring back to our co-op. I just think that is such a clear way of describing the two types of shares.
Yeah, we only have a handful of accelerator shares. I don't know, Vesta, if you know the exact number, but primarily we are just comprised of our voting shares.
I can get it. Keep talking.
Okay. Yeah, we've just got a handful, and we actually have had discussions around only opening up the accelerator shares at certain times, like when we want to do a capital drive, So that way we're, you know, focused more so on growing our membership rather than just growing the funds. And also, you know, back to the conversation around dividends, recognizing, you know, that we're still in this moment of like just wanting to reinvest in ourselves. You know, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to purchase accelerator shares when we're not actively giving out dividends. But you know, we are grateful for the folks that have purchased them, and you know, definitely will have opportunities for folks to do so again. But
So
yeah,
just to
just
fill in the specifics, we have 39 Class C accelerator shares. Those are the small ones, the $500 shares. And we have 3 of the $5,000 Class D shares. So, yeah.
Great. Okay, thanks. That's really helpful. So it's really through the voting membership.
Right. And a lot of our members who own the Class C shares actually purchase that at the same time as their voting share. Right. So their initial investment was the $1,000, and that let them get you always have to have the voting share first, of course. And that let them get the voting share and an accelerator share at the same time. And as Renna said, we've tweaked or played a little bit with that model. But that model was really nice for attracting some of those initial Class C shares, right? Individuals were like, look, I'm comfortable investing this $1,000. And that's actually partly how we set those accelerator share values. Yeah.
Awesome. Way to go. It's really wonderful to hear your experience. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you and good luck.
Thanks.
With where you guys are at in your journey, have you thought through and projected what it would take for you to be at a spot where you do not need any outside capital for future deals, and you're able to, when you go to purchase more commercial property that's going to be, you know, community owned, collectively owned, that could be done simply through the assets of the co-op and still be able to pay out dividends? Do you guys know like what scale you would have to get to kind of create that internal self-sustaining, you know, kind of ideal that you would probably want to get to?
I do not.
So we don't have like
Yeah.
exact figures on that, obviously. I think I've seen little rough estimates tossed around that we would need to get somewhere between 8 and 10 properties,
Mhm.
which is a lot further away, obviously, than it might be. But I don't think those are based on particularly solid numbers. I think those were just sort of speculative based on kind of where we are with one. So I wouldn't put any real like sense of like that's the number we're
Yeah.
aiming for.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to get to here is that if you guys are thinking down the future, maybe we're talking 5 years, maybe we're talking 25, I'm not sure. But when you guys are thinking about what Meadville could look like, where the profits coming off of the rents in your commercial district, where a certain percentage of those, a large percentage of those, are being decided by the co-op members rather than by, you know, individual landlords, individual property owners. You know, that's a lot of, it's obviously going to take years, lots of work, lots of organizing to get there. What do you see Meadville looking like that makes it worth that effort and worth that collaboration in the long run? Like what does Meadville look like when you guys have made that impact?
For me, it looks like a lot less vape shops and games of skills. Um, but I think it looks like a community that reflects what the people need and want. I had attended a Main Street session on, you know, focusing on like businesses along your main street of, you know, necessity of what people need, like day to day, what are people buying, you know, that they're currently going outside of your town to get that you can bring back in your town instead of like an olive oil tasting room, which, you know, can be a cool, fun thing, but no one needs that much olive oil on a daily basis. And I think also just having that communal pride in our downtown again. A lot of us who are part of this organization, myself, Vesta, Autumn, our current president, are not native to Meadville. And so we've kind of had this opportunity to see it through new eyes and be able to see it through see its potential. But really wanting the people who live here, who have been here, to love Meadville as much as we do, and have it be a place where people aren't saying, oh, there's nothing to do here, or, I wish we had this in town, or I wish we had that. I think when, we've got that buy-in from folks and who feel like they don't need to go out of town to have fun or to get what they need, that'll, that's the kind of impact that I think we're going for.
Yeah, I would agree. And I would just sum that up with a story. I was talking to a woman about the co-op, and she had a son who was turning 16 at the time. And she said, I want you guys to succeed because I want Meadville to be a place where he thinks he could grow up and become an adult and stay. Because right now, all he thinks is, how can I get away? So that would be what I want it to be, right? Not where everybody stays, of course, but where that's a realistic possibility for families who are born and raised here to see
Right.
economic opportunity.
You want to see your success measured in social capital of a kid.
Exactly.
Hope to come back. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that I've learned a lot. I'm excited and inspired by the work you guys are doing. I think this is the more that people can learn about what you're doing and help contribute, the better. We have the link in the chat. We're also going to put it in the notes of the video and the podcast there. But we're looking at if you want to go to it right now, go to nwpic.coop. And make sure to tune in here. Make sure to, once we get this video posted, share it with the people that would benefit from that. Make sure to keep tuning in to Community Capital Live. We do this just about every 2 weeks, where we talk to other people who are out there doing this hard work and actually, talking about the reality of it and how other people can do the same thing. So make sure to check this out on the Main Street Journal. Make sure to get yourself registered for a neighborhood economics conference, subscribe to the Mindful Marketplace, and become a member of Impact Alpha. In the process, we're all very grateful for you and for your time. Thanks, Kevin Jones. Thank you to Michael Schumann. Thanks to Vesta and Renna from the Northwest Pennsylvania Investment Co-op. And until next time, remember, we are each other.
Thank you all.
And come and see funds like theirs in